All right, we are live. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jacob Daniel. I'm by myself tonight, unless my co-host Rob decides to come out of wherever he's hiding. I hope he's not being chased down by the FBI or something. So, uh, prayers and best wishes for Rob. He's at MIA at the moment, but maybe he'll join us midstream. But for now, it's just me. This is the Take Human Action PA Mises Caucus podcast. Thank you all for tuning in and watching tonight. Tonight, I'm excited to have a friend of mine on here in the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, who is running for actually a couple of different office spots and offices this year and next, I think. But I'll bring her on so she can explain all that. It is Bonnie Flaherty. Bonnie, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, Jacob. How are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I feel like it's been a year all in the past month because of all the stuff I've had going on. It's been
Yes.
crazy, but I'm doing okay and excited to talk to you. We've been trying to get more candidates on this podcast, and so I'm glad that you were able to come on tonight. So you're running for two positions, but I don't know which is the one that is. Are they both this year, or is one this year and one next year?
They're actually both this year. So,
Okay.
Voters in certain parts of my district are going to see my name twice on their ballot. The first office that I'm running for is state rep for District 113 here in Pennsylvania. It was vacated by Democrat Marty Flynn. He won a special election seat in a Senate race in May. And obviously now the seat is vacant, so they're hosting a special election. And then the second office that I'm running for is actually auditor of my township here in South Abington Township. And for that one, I am uncontested. So I have high hopes that that'll go well.
Yeah, I'm also running uncontested for not auditor. I'm going for a constable here in Downtown in my district. So it was weird. I got so I actually didn't even get them because I wasn't able to attend our last county meeting. But then we had a local parade, and the York County LP was in the parade, and they saw me, and then they get announced on the megaphone. It was like, and here is one of our candidates running, and I was just like, oh God, like put on the spot like that, which is very weird for me. I used to be very anti-political, so now that I'm running for office, and I feel like I've betrayed my former self a little bit. But I always like to ask people when they come on the show, sort of like before we get into the nitty gritty of like the election stuff and what's going on with that. Like, what makes you a libertarian, and what brought you to both like the Libertarian Party, I guess, but also just more broadly, like to believe in libertarianism. So I always like to hear people's stories. So if you could share yours, that'd be awesome.
Sure, I kind of have it's sort of boring, but also interesting. Libertarian candidates are what brought me into the Libertarian Party. I refer to myself as a recovering Republican. I was actually a pretty big Republican at one time. I was the treasurer of the Young Republicans Club in college and all of that good stuff. And basically over time, I stopped calling myself a Republican and started calling myself a constitutionalist. I was like too cool to say that I was a Republican. People would say, what are you? And I'm like, well, I'm a registered Republican, but I'm actually a constitutionalist. And from there, it kind of developed. I started looking into certain candidates and things like that, and realized that I really aligned with libertarian candidates and libertarian stances versus, any of the more conservative, politicians. So actually, a few years ago, a friend of mine said to me, Bonnie, I think you're a libertarian. Like, I don't actually think that you're a Republican. And I'm like, well, I think I am too. And he was like, you can register as a libertarian in Pennsylvania. And I said, no, you can? And he said, yeah. And that was it. Then I registered as a libertarian. I mean, I've been voting libertarian because I aligned with libertarian candidates for some time, but I'm actually kind of a baby libertarian.
I feel like a lot of us are. I mean, it feels like the liberty movement and the party has exploded over the last few years. And so, I mean, I know my first convention that I attended was back in 2018, and I mean, I'm sure there was more, but it literally felt like there was 12 of us back then. And then going to the convention last year when it was like we couldn't all fit under the tent, it was like, wow, what happened? I don't know how much of that, like, it's kind of like, I feel like part of that is that, libertarians have been putting a good work. And also, I feel like part of that's like the state has been getting worse. And so, which makes our job a little bit easier when it's, maybe not as hard to point out, like, maybe it's when the state is more obviously evil, it's easier to make the argument, I guess, to people that the things libertarians have been saying for a while are obviously true. What are the issues that I guess mean the most to you? Everyone, like, I mean, I think most libertarians, it's like, we kind of know and believe in all of the positions, but usually there's like maybe 1, 2, or 3 issues that like we especially care about that kind of like help to bring us here. So like what are the issues that the state's involvement in has particularly upset you from a libertarian perspective?
So a little background: I work in drug and alcohol rehabilitation, so substance abuse rehabilitation fields. I work at a rehab. So because of that, I feel like I have a lot of firsthand knowledge and experience in seeing the way that the war on drugs has affected people. So I would say that obviously because of that, one of my main, points of one of the main reasons, one of the things that I'm most active, in discussing is decriminalization of drugs and obviously criminal justice reform. Yeah, I think that one gets me the most angry.
Yeah, it's definitely a big one for me too. I mean, I remember when I first I learned this. So I came more. I was raised in a Republican household, but I actually came more from the left. I was a registered Democrat and Bernie Sanders supporter back in like 2014, 2015. And I've always been upset though by like the war on drugs and the fact that like we have per capita, I think like the world's biggest prison population. I think it's the world's biggest prison population, period, I think.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and there's countries that have more people than us and less people in prison. So it's, and a lot of that has to do with the war on drugs, which is just damaging on so many levels. And, like a lot of times I think libertarians, we can hyper focus on how bad the war on drugs is in terms of like, more like a philosophical sense of like, it's like, you own yourself, you should have a right to do something. And we talk a lot about that. But it's really a human rights tragedy. I mean, people have their entire lives ruined for having like a dime of weed in their pocket. I mean, it's so silly. By the way, quickly, I'm going to add Rob to the stream. He's finally climbed out of the hole that he was in, I guess.
I kind of went a little further.
Can't hear you though, Rob.
This is where all the real
You got some kind of music playing or something.
You're kidding me. Man, Ryan's...
I'm gonna mute you while you figure it out. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about like your experience, I guess, in your work and stuff, and sort of like the ways you've seen, kind of like the state's drug policy damage people.
Absolutely. So, and you are correct. We do have the world's largest prison population. So you think of, very oppressive countries like China, things like that, and you would assume that they would have more incarcerated, but we actually, in the United States, have the most people incarcerated. We are the most incarcerated country in the entire world. That's disgusting, but that's just the way that it is. And actually, I believe since like 1983, I could be wrong on the date, but like since 1983 or something like that, our prison population has boomed like 294%, 295%, something like that. It's absolutely insane. And it's basically due to the failed war on drugs. You know, we have, I think that like half of those incarcerations are marijuana related, and 80% of them are simply for possession only. So people are going to jail and they're spending years in jail because of
minimum mandatory sentencing.
Mandatory minimum sentencing, and essentially they're getting out, and then their lives are ruined because no one wants to employ a felon, no one wants to rent to a felon, you know. So because you imbibed and decided that you were going to smoke pot or something, like your whole life is ruined for years to come. It's a travesty, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the mantra "no victim, no crime" is really one of the most important libertarian mantras, and something that comes to mind here, because it's just whenever you try to have conversations with people about this and they try to point out, you know, like, well, that they might think marijuana, you know, isn't good for people, and I would debate with them on that. But then there's other drugs like, you know, I don't know, heroin or cocaine, other things that, like, you know, narcotics and stuff that people might feel like, oh, well, you know, those are bad for people. It's like, okay, but like, even if I agree with you on any of those, that like it's not good or not something that I would personally do, it's, if it's not hurting anyone else, I'm not sure why, you know, it's something that we need a law for, because generally, like, law should be like for if some kind of, like, you know, violation of rights has happened, and somebody, you know, using any kind of substance is really just their own business. And you know, if it's not hurting anyone, you know, it's weird. And I think there's like this mental disconnect. Like, people don't realize, like, I think a lot of people, they're like, well, these things are bad, so they should be banned. But they have a disconnect between what the consequences of that are. They don't realize that what they're advocating for is, you know, police, like men with guns, going to arrest these people and throw them in jail. And that ties into the other issue you brought up, which is criminal justice reform, because there's a lot of problems, you know, not just with the war on drugs, but just with everything, where our legal system is just, you know, royally screwed. And it really, it's like, in my experience, because I've had close family members of mine that have gone through some really horrific legal battles, and like, what I realized when I watched them go through that was that, like, our system is basically built that you can get away with anything if you're rich, and can't get away with anything if you're poor. And like, you know, that's why you know, minorities especially are really hit hard by our criminal justice system. And you know, so I'm sure you've seen a lot of that too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, drug laws are essentially racist. They stem from racist thought. So a lot of what Nixon and Reagan put into effect, it stemmed from, you know, wanting to control certain populations, and that's basically what it boils down to. But I mean, like you said, our system is so flawed. So for instance, you know, I had a client at the rehab recently who he completed treatment, and because the magistrate, because the people at the magistrate's office were lackadaisical and didn't complete what they needed to on their end, instead of going to a halfway house, you know, sober living facility, he was sent back to jail. So he came, he did his time in rehab. He was mandated to go to rehab. And because of their error, he went back to jail. And he knew that going back to jail was going to put him right back into that mindset, and that he was probably going to relapse. And there was nothing that we could do about it. So.
Well, having a you know, bit of an inside on this, as I practice in criminal law quite a bit. I absolutely agree with that. The war on drugs, the conviction rate and the incarceration rate is so the disparate impact on minority communities is just totally unacceptable. But I do think that it comes not necessarily with a racist intent, but the racist impact is undeniable. I find that a lot of where it goes wrong is with those who can afford private attorneys and those who are stuck using public defenders, because the public defenders are so ingrained within the system. They're just looking for their next promotion within the DA, to the next political office move, and they're complacent and complicit with this action going on between the police and the DAs and the whole criminal justice system, just to funnel people in, get them convicted, and get them out. People who afford private attorneys, they're paying for somebody to stand up there, and the DAs will work with them and compromise, but the public defenders, it's just a numbers game. It's like, I'll give you this many convictions on this one, you give me one big one there, and it's like a cap and trade almost with people's lives. It's really terrible, and the ones who are hit the most by this is the poorest communities and in our country. That at the same time that we acknowledged minorities as human beings, we strapped them down with so many different obstacles in their way to overcome these things, that they have this generational poverty that has happened, and that it continues to be preyed upon in the war on drugs. And I think that's where the conviction and incarceration disparate impact is really stemming from, is that they're trapped in this generational poverty. And there's one other thing I'd like to comment on that you talked about, and it was the you know what, there it goes. We're doing this again.
Doesn't that suck? Well, I was going to say that's what I was saying earlier, but I was like, it feels like our system is really set up that, like, if you're rich, you can get away with almost anything.
Yeah.
You can get away with murder sometimes if you're rich. If you're poor, you can't get away with even something where you should probably get off.
Nobody, including the judges or the DA, wants to try a case. Nobody does.
Yeah. And I mean, like, my close family member that, and I'm trying to not like give details or names and stuff, because I want to respect their privacy, but we were, as a small business, like my family's a small business, we were able to afford a lawyer for a certain point of time, but it still cost an incredible amount of money, and we can only afford it for so long. And because of the financial considerations and stuff, it was like wow, to get, like, we knew this person was innocent, and we knew we could win potentially. Wasn't guaranteed, but we thought we had a good chance. But it was like, by the time we win, we will have exhausted so much time and so much money. And the family member didn't want that, so they were like, "I'm like, let's just get a plea.
Yeah.
It's gonna be cheaper. It's gonna be easier." And it was like, so we spent all that money just to get a plea to avoid jail time. Yes. But a lot of people in minority communities with no generational wealth, no entrepreneurs in the family and stuff, because they're just like, their circumstances, like, they don't even have that chance. They just like take the public defender, take the first plea that's offered.
Right. And the real nasty part of the whole minimum mandatory sentencing bit is that they overcharge you just so that you'll settle for something even more than what you may have even done in the first place. Like, are you gonna go and you might even be right, you might even have a great case, but you're gonna have to go and stand in front of 12 people and convince them that all these police are lying, the DA is lying, all of this thing is wrong, and you are telling the truth. You're the one who is not guilty here, and you're gonna have to risk going to jail for 10, 20, 30 years just to prove you're innocent. So yeah, you take a 5-year plea just so that your life isn't completely ruined. And it's the minimum mandatory sentencing. I can't stress enough how horrible of a component that this has been in our criminal justice system. We could solve a lot. We can correct a lot by doing that, by addressing the minimum mandatory sentencing system.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I mean, what are the things that you have done in like your community and like the work you've done, Bonnie, to try to help people, when they've been victimized by the state? And then, like, also, like, what are the things that you want to do here locally in PA, if you can, become state rep, or continue to build and get involved in local politics here? What are some of the things that you want to do? I mean, obviously we all want to advocate the message and get more people to like, that's one part of it, but then it's like, what can we do both in and out of politics to try to reach out in our communities and help people like this?
Well, I think that one of the most important things, and I say this all the time, is that I see people and I listen to them. So a lot of times people feel invisible in situations like this, particularly poor people or people in minority communities. They feel like they aren't heard and they do feel invisible. And having grown up poor, I can attest that I definitely at times feel like someone who comes from my background is invisible to many politicians, and their life is not their life and their struggles and things like that. The normal things that affect normal, real people, it's not in their wheelhouse. They're not thinking about it because they've never experienced it. So I think that one of the most important things for me is to, remain at the level that I come from, hear those people, and then actively attempt to affect change from their viewpoint, because it is a refreshing viewpoint, in the political realm. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. Another component of like the political element of like the war on drugs and criminal justice system is that, we've started to see some, I guess, decriminalization to a certain extent across our country, which has been good. And like on one hand, I don't want to complain too much about this point because like it is marginally better that this has happened, but it's still like bad and sucks. Like we'll see places where, all right, well now it's no longer illegal, but now we're just going to implement this really high tax and
Right.
and all these regulations and stuff. And like, oh, if you have a medical marijuana card, you can't own a firearm and all these different things. So it's like these that's the other part of this is that like the state feels some cultural pressure about how unpopular some of these laws are. But I feel like it's like, like I don't want to, I don't know, like make the perfect the enemy of the good. Like I'm not saying I'm against all incrementalism, but sometimes I'm like, is it a good trade to trade, drug, like, the criminalization of stuff for the heavy regulation of it? Like I guess for people, they'd rather probably lose some of their rights but not be in jail than be thrown in jail for having weed. But it's just like we're still ceding that ground to the state that they have a right to tell us what to do with our bodies. And, as a libertarian who believes in self-ownership, that's just something I have a hard time not getting animated about. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
So I have this fun thing that I like to describe the government under. Have you ever seen the movie The Lion King?
Of course, yes.
Okay, so the hyenas, how they kind of circle around and they're like waiting for their meal, and they're, they just have this like vicious look on their face. That's how I view, this situation. It's incremental and it's slow because they're trying to figure out how they can get their meal out of this and how they can tax us on it and benefit from it and profit from it. And they're just not quite sure how to do it properly yet. So they're taking their time.
Well, I think, over the last 100 years, how we got to the place we are, they incrementally put the bar a little bit further and a little bit further. So I'd see nothing wrong with trying the reverse and incrementally trying to push it back the other way. I think we should attack them in all fronts. We should have the people who are the moderates and trying to work with them, to have the people incrementally trying to move it back, but then also have the people trying to change the minds of the people and push it all the way at once. It's the same idea as we need the left libertarians and the right and the agorists and the anarchists, and we need them all. It's like, let's attack them from all fronts and see where we can get ground, when we can get ground.
Yeah.
There's this cool organization called the Drug Policy Alliance. I don't know if you've heard of them or not, but they're very good at that. So you guys may want to look into them.
Oh, very good.
They're good about getting everyone together on this one issue.
Yeah. Issue coalitions, I can't stress enough how important issue coalitions really need to be. I mean, we need to be working with anyone who shares areas of common ground with us, no matter what. We may have hugely different opinions on other issues, but if we have if we share an area of common ground, we really should be working with everyone that we can, because we ain't gonna do this by ourselves. Plus, if we build a little goodwill with them, maybe they'll listen to some of the other ideas that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. An issue that's also related to these things, and like I wanted to get Bonnie's thoughts on, like I know you said the issues you care about the most are drug decriminalization and criminal justice reform, and I mean like that's preaching to the choir here at the Mises Caucus. Those are like two of our biggest issues as well. And another issue that like I think some libertarians don't like to talk about because it's sometimes not as popular. It can be a bit more divisive to talk about this, but it's very much related, I think, our gun rights. And, it's like, especially like what I brought up earlier, like how like they're giving people medical marijuana cards and then saying, oh, but you now forfeited the right to defend yourself. And, that affects minorities disproportionately too. Because I mean, a lot of times it's like, it's like I sometimes feel a little silly where I live because like I live in a really safe neighborhood. And so like when with my concealed carry license, go out, into, work and into the grocery store and stuff. And, I'm, concealing a firearm and stuff. It's like, it sometimes feels like, you're like, why am I putting this on? Like the odds of me having to use this are like, slim to none. Then in areas where real violence happens on a, somewhat, unfortunately regular basis, it's like people are denied the right to actually be able to defend themselves. And then a lot of times it's like some people will break that rule anyway because like they feel like they have to. And then like I've heard so many stories about people getting pulled over for like when they have like weed or something and then finding a firearm in their car, then they get like double tacked. And it's just like I get so upset. Like these police departments will go to Facebook and post like, look at this big bust we did, this guy had like 5 bags of marijuana and a 9mm in the back. It's just like, wow.
Well, guns and drugs is a felony, like just point blank. There's no way around it. Guns and drugs is a felony. So they love that.
Yeah. So what are you?
If I might expand on Jacob's point there a bit, as a state rep, I think here's where we're going to find difficulty, because I think in these things at the state level, what work can we really do as a libertarian, right? And I think if we apply the ideas of, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Scott Horton, but Scott Horton has he runs the Libertarian Institute, and he has the podcast, and fantastic on foreign policy, but he has a lot of great libertarian philosophical ideas and approaches as well. He actually helped Gary Johnson on his campaign, I think in 2016. I can't remember if it was 12 or 16, but his idea, he says this all the time: we attack the left from the left and the right from the right. And here in Pennsylvania, I believe that we have a primarily Democratic state legislature, I believe, correct? That's my impression. So I think we're going to have a hard time in Pennsylvania using a state legislative position to affect real legislative change and reform. But here's where I think that we can do it. So we're going to have difficulty on Republican issues like gun control, but where we can do a lot of work is in the Democratic Senate issues. And this is something that we tell a lot of people on our onboarding welcoming calls, getting into the Mises Caucus, is that if you take these issues of whatever, if you're in a blue area, take their issues that they claim to be good on and we're better on, and hold them to it and stick them to it. So if we have a blue legislative area, let's go after full recreationalization of marijuana. Bring some legislation to the state house and say, hey, Democrats, this is on your own Democratic platform, decriminalization and recreation. Why am I, the libertarian, coming here to you, bringing this to you and pushing through recreation? So you stick them to their own platform and make them take the actual action. So I think we'll have a difficulty on the gun law stuff, but on police reform, on criminal justice reform, on the drug war, I think we can have a huge impact as libertarians here in Pennsylvania, bringing these things that are on the Democratic platform to these people and say, hey, put your money where your mouth is. Here's legislation. This is on your platform. Let's push it through.
Right. So I do believe it's actually a Republican majority right now.
Is it?
Yeah, I believe so. But I think that you're absolutely right. I completely agree.
Well, if it's a Republican majority, then maybe we can make some headway in the gun reform area. Say, hey, this is on your platform. Let's make this a sanctuary state. Let's make this, concealed carry by right. Let's get these community these poor communities primarily where they're not able to defend themselves. Let's get them defending themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, another topic that, we should probably talk about because it's, very prominent still in current events is, all the lockdowns and the COVID mandates and stuff, you're also secretary of the LPPA, and we're on a couple committees together, actually. Actually, all three of us are on a couple committees together. So
Yeah,
kind of funny. But, a lot of people like small L and big L libertarians over the last, year and a half or so felt that, the Libertarian Party, both kind of broadly and then sometimes individual, state affiliates and candidates didn't do a good enough job over 2020, kind of like speaking out against the overreach of the both the federal government and individual state governments as well into like restricting the essential liberties of people, not letting them leave their homes in some places, not letting them go to parks, like arresting people for being out in their cars and just like really silly, ridiculous things. It seems to be changing a bit lately, a bit more lately though, where both we had an ad released by the National Party. I know here in the Pennsylvania Party, we've begun to be more outspoken on these issues and stuff, which has made me and a lot of other people happy. What were your thoughts over like 2020? And do you feel like we both as a party and then like you as a candidate, do we need to be more like loud and outspoken about what's going on right now? Because it's one of the most like in my opinion, it's one of the biggest expansions of government control into the free market and into like, over people's lives that like we've seen in at least 100 years, I think.
Absolutely. So I think that at times we were a little too lukewarm, for sure. I personally have been very outspoken about being against mandates and shutdowns and things like that. And even as a candidate, I actually just interviewed for my local paper today, the Scranton Times, and that the issue came up, and I made sure that I was quoted, being against the mandates and the lockdowns and mandatory vaccination and things like that. So, personally, I think that as a candidate for the Libertarian Party, you do have to be outspoken and let people know, where we stand on that. But one of the questions that he asked me today was, do I believe that the government has a right to tell people that they should be vaccinated? And I said, the government shouldn't have a right to tell people what they should be doing, period. The word should there is the problem. He's like, well, it's not, even if they don't mandate it, they're just telling them that that they should get it. I said, no, that's not their place.
Right.
So
that's heading into the territory of government being hand in hand with private businesses. And, that to me, as Mussolini defined it, that's fascism when government and business are married. So when they go and tell you should be consuming a product, to me, that's where we're really headed into dangerous territory. And second of all, you can't regulate morality. You can make it as illegal or legal as you want to do, but that doesn't change the hearts and minds of the people.
No, you can't mandate feelings.
That's right.
You can't. And interesting fact also is in 2020, 48 members of Congress own stock in Pfizer.
There was a graphic I saw today. A friend of mine, Kareem, I was on another podcast. He put one up there of the top 10 stocks that people in Congress hold, and two of the ones that jumped up from last year are Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson have jumped up into the top 10.
I'm absolutely shocked.
It's just weird. Like I remember like it's really frustrating for me as a like former lefty. I remember back when I was like involved in the Bernie Sanders campaigns and rallies and stuff, like they were always um, going on about the relationship between the government and the pharmaceutical companies and the big like all the ways in which like copyright and trademark laws and stuff like intellectual property laws were helping these people to just get rich, to make these different things and stuff. And like they were really correct in a lot of their criticisms and stuff of that relationship. And they now it's just like trust the science, do what you're told. And it's like it's frustrating, like you gave the correct answer in my opinion to that reporter, because it's like, how can anyone say what like really anyone should do? I mean, like the only opinion I have on anyone else is like the NAP, like don't initiate force against anyone else. Other than that, like I don't know what's best for you. How could I know? How could I know? Like I have a hard enough time just like figuring out what's best for me and my family. Like don't put the burden of trying to figure out what's best for everyone else. And as far as the vaccine goes, it probably makes sense for some people, and for other people, it probably doesn't make sense. And the best people to decide that are the people themselves, and talking to their doctors. And it's none of our business. They should be able to do what they want and make the decision they have. And it's just our society has become so focused on this one issue, and it's frustrating. And like I'm not even somebody who's like I'm not really anti-vax, and I've looked into it. I've even considered getting it. But when the government gets involved, like even if we were going to take the perspective the vaccine was like an unmitigated good thing, hypothetically, which I'm not totally convinced of, but let's say it was, well, all the government getting involved and telling people they should do it and threatening to do mandates to do it is going to piss off a lot of people and actually incentivize them to say like, well, no, I'm not going to do it just solely out of the fact that you're trying to force me to do it.
Right. No, I've been saying that myself, actually. I mean, especially in our community, right? Our "don't tell me what to do" line. It's it has the opposite effect. But I personally decided to get vaccinated, and I don't feel like I need to tell anyone that. But I did.
You mean you don't feel that you need to tell everybody your private medical history?
Right. But I mean, I had my reasons, and they are reasons that are personal to me and for health, for my own health. One of my favorite things to tell people is to mind your own health. I have no interest, nor do I have any intention on having my children vaccinated. I don't believe that they need the vaccine. Whereas I, for my health, made the decision to get it. In hindsight, would I do it again? No. But, it's where I'm at. So, but I feel like I'm an embodiment of, health choice, making decisions for your own health. Then I made that decision for my own health, but I do not expect anyone else to make that decision for my health or anyone's health around me.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like with a lot of people who got the vaccine, I've heard a lot of people who are expressing at least a little bit of buyer's remorse, being like, I didn't realize this was going to be like, oh, get this booster. Now go get this booster. And now it's like, all right, where does it end? And it's like, how effective is a vaccine that I have to keep on re-upping every, like 6 months, maybe more? Yeah. And even then it's like, again, like, I mean, I think vaccines are a wonderful invention of modern science. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like, or let's go a step further as libertarians, of the free market, right? So, you know what I mean?
Well
yeah.
done.
But, like, I feel like there's a lot more government involved here than market, unfortunately, and it's unfortunately made a mess of things.
I saw I can't remember who it was, but there was a tweet posted in the main Mises Facebook page. I don't remember who originally made the tweet, but it said in LA right now, if you're vaccinated, you can test positive for COVID and still go to a public event. Whereas if you do not have a vaccine but test negative, you are prohibited from going to the same event. And this is not about being COVID anymore, preventing COVID. This is about getting people vaccinated, and that's a troubling
Show me your
thought.
papers.
Yeah, right. That's a troubling thought.
Yeah, it is. Um, well, maybe another subject I wanted to get into. I feel like we've kind of talked about the philosophy and the issues, a lot here, pretty and rather uh, good conversation. But getting more into like the political side of things, like let's get into the nitty gritty there. I mean, so what are some of the ways that we as like libertarians, whether you're Mises caucus, any other caucus, no caucus at all, like whatever, like what are some ways that we can get better at politics, you think, and do a better job at like supporting our candidates? I mean, like one of the things that like the reason I started this podcast was like one of the things I felt we needed to do more was get our candidates more exposure. Because I feel like we have a lot of candidates, especially here in Pennsylvania. We have tons,
Yeah.
and tons of people who are already elected. But it's like we need to advertise better, I think, like both what our elected candidates are doing, and then the candidates while they're running, to get more of a voice. Is that something you agree with? And what are some other things you think that we need to continue to improve on, from like the political angle, like as far as like supporting our candidates and growing the party?
So, one of the biggest things that I feel like we can do to support our candidates is to educate them. So, I think that we have a lot of very interested and excited people, but because we are such a small party and we are experiencing such a boom in membership, a lot of our people are greenhorn, right? Like they're very fresh, and a lot of them don't have much experience in politics at all. I mean, myself included, I'm not a politician by any means. So I think that one of the biggest ways is to educate our candidates on what it actually takes to affect change, to understand the inner workings of the political realm that they're trying to step into and attempting to get into. But I also do believe that getting out and physically supporting our candidates, door knocking, campaigning for them, getting their name out there in their communities. We get our candidates' names out and their platforms out to our own community, but we're so small. It takes the extended communities to come in and vote for them. So I think that one of the biggest things that we need to do is help candidates get out into their own communities, and to bring people from other parties into our circle, and their bubble, basically.
This is somewhere I think that the Mises Caucus can have a real impact in what we're not doing, and where we might be able to build some camaraderie with other members of the party, is bringing all of this. The Mises Caucus are a bunch of nerds who are very, very well read and know the libertarian philosophy quite intimately. And I think that if we can bring all of this this principled knowledge that we have, and work with other members of the party who are experienced running campaigns, or really have the drive to push campaigns, and boil it down to the messages that we can package up and deliver to these candidates and say, here you go, here's your blue issues, here's your red issues, here, take this and run with it, and spread this all. I think that's where we could really have an impact as the Mises Caucus, because we care about this messaging so much. And I think we're selling ourselves short, and not using the avenue of candidacy, or helping candidates to grow their messaging. And I think that I think maybe we can gain some traction there.
Yeah, no, I mean that's certainly one way I think that we can definitely help. I mean, because I feel like we can talk about like yeah, I agree with you, Rob. Like we're a bunch of nerds who care a lot about the philosophy, and the philosophy is important, and I want our candidates and the people who are in charge of our national and state affiliates to like know the philosophy and advocate for it well. But most people are not going to like most normies and stuff, like they're not going to watch this podcast and they're not going to read the books and stuff we
You're
read
not
and
gonna
stuff.
you're not
So
gonna read 1,500-page economic treatises for fun.
I mean, that sounds like a great way to spend a weekend for me, but for a lot of people, it's like, what's wrong with you? But like, I agree with like what Bonnie said, like, getting our candidates out into the community and more involved seems like first of all, just like to let them know, like, hey, we're here, we exist, we're
Yeah.
doing things. And then second of all, to like, like one of the things like that I really care about, and I'm trying to, kind of like promote from like, not just in the really the Mises caucus, but like now being in the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania is like, I want us to just like be different. And it's like the best analogy I can have is it's kind of like that Christian analogy where like Jesus tells his apostles that like people should recognize you by like the fruits of your life. And it's like I want libertarians to like be politicians, be candidates running for office, be in their communities, and people just like like they wouldn't even have to know you're a libertarian. They just go like, Bonnie, what is it about you? Like you're doing all these things and you're so active in the community. Like why are you doing this? Like it's inspiring, it's motivating me, but like I don't know what motivates you. And like I think that we have to yes, we have to get ballot access, and yes, we have to know how to play the political game right. But I sometimes worry that like when we're trying to learn all those intricacies and get into the system, that sometimes we end up like styling ourselves too much after the duopoly parties. And it's like I don't want us to look like them. I want us to be very much easily recognized as separate and foreign from like your regular plain Jane status politician. Would you agree with that? Or I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that. I mean, and at the same time, we do need to rub elbows with them, and we do need to, get. I don't want to say the word infiltrate, but we do need to.
I'm fine with that word.
We do need to work with
We just
them,
can't use the word insurrection.
So unfortunately, as much as we do want to be recognized as different, you have to pay to play, right? You have to be in. You have to
True.
be in the. You have to be in the game. You have to have some skin in the game. So in order to do that, then you just sometimes you have to blend a little bit, but
It's a tough balance.
it is.
It's
Well,
like
that's where I think
like,
these coalitions can come into play, because when you have common ground, you go to the people, and particularly in the political world, and this is a little bit along the lines of what I was saying too, and stick them to their ideas. Say, hey, this is on your platform. Let's work together and push this stuff through. Let's build these bridges, work together, and see what we can get done.
Absolutely. Coalitions and alliances are so important. I mean, getting out into your community, like you said, Jacob, and like being involved and, not necessarily making it political, but just involving yourself and building a rapport with your neighbors and your community is very important. One of the things, so when I was collecting my signatures, I targeted my parents' neighborhood. I went to my parents' neighborhood and I knocked on all of the doors and I said, my parents live around the corner. I'm from this neighborhood. And they didn't care what party I was from. They loved that I was from the neighborhood and I was one of them and I was asking them for their help. So, I mean, for instance, also right now I'm helping a friend with a blanket drive for the homeless. And I said to her, I can reach out to my political connections, like the Libertarian connections, but I don't want you to think that this is political. It's literally just that I want to make sure that we get this taken care of, like to the best of my ability. I want to get you, the most, donations for this cause. And she said, I don't care if you put it on all the pages and you ask all of your political friends, like you're doing something and you're helping me, and that's all that matters to me. So those types of things, not necessarily making them political, but getting out and involving yourself in your community is going to have a positive effect when you are running as a libertarian, or when you are speaking on libertarian, platform, they're going to respect you for being, a genuine member of that community and not just trying to, smoke and mirror and, give them a show when it comes time to needing their vote.
Bonnie, I'm not sure what area do you represent? What county?
So I'm in Lackawanna County.
Okay, I'm not sure how much. I'm here in Allegheny, so I have here we have a very large minority community. Do you have much of a minority presence in Lackawanna?
It's not too high, but we are considered, a more urban county. So
how do you think as libertarians that we reach the minority communities?
It's a good question.
that is a good question.
Because this is something that I've been deeply thinking about and trying to figure out, because I think that they would love this message, and I don't think that there's many more communities who are more skeptical of the government than minority communities, and for very good reason.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we can figure out how to reach the minority community, I think that is an area where we could gain a lot of support and ground, and I'm trying to develop a message to reach them.
Well, the fact that you're saying that we have so much common ground, and that, if you could just talk to them, I mean, that's basically what you do. You just talk to people, you get to know people, you talk to them, you see them. I know I mentioned that before. A lot of individuals feel invisible to politicians. I think connecting and making sure that people know that you see them and that they're not invisible is incredibly important.
Yeah. So I've had a thought, and this is what I reached out to you a while ago, Bonnie. I remember I said I have some ideas for criminal justice reform. But are you familiar with the principle of jury nullification?
Somewhat. Would you mind explaining it?
Yeah. So jury nullification is this is ingrained in our Constitution. This is tested and runs quite deep in our history. Jury nullification is the idea that even if a person is found guilty of a law, a jury can choose to not convict them. They can say that, yes, even if this person has satisfied all of your requirements for being guilty, we do not feel that they should be convicted for this act that they've done. And this is something that I think that we may be able to reach the minority communities in, because it puts the power back into the hands of the people in their communities to say, we are not going to convict under these bad laws, particularly drug laws.
Yes.
But it is in many states illegal to inform juries of their right to jury nullification. This isn't by statute; it's by precedent, by case law precedent. So one area I think that we could make some real head ground in a state level is by pushing the idea of making a statute, by informing juries of their right to nullification by statute. And as a legislature, that's something that could be done. And I think that's a message that the minority communities might grab onto.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think my wheels are spinning right now, because I'm thinking of all kinds of ways that we can connect with people on this. To educate them. Yeah.
Please take that one and run with it, because there's so much that can be done through jury nullification. If we can just tell people that they don't have to put this person in a cage for having some plant in their pocket.
Yes, I'm writing it down.
This podcast has turned into a brainstorming session.
I can't have any type of, I can't be on the computer screen without taking some type of note. It's just, no.
So, as we get close here to the end, what are some ways that people can help your, campaign specifically? I mean, I know we're coming, close up to the elections there. What's the election day? And
it's November 2nd. So it's Tuesday.
A week away.
Yeah. So one of the best ways that someone can help my campaign is if you want to come to Lackawanna County and you want to work the polls and, hand out some literature for me, that would be fantastic. If you have connections in my district and you want to reach out to them and say, hey, there's this candidate that I think that you would really like, please send them a message, email, text, whatever. I think that those are basically the two most important ways that you can help at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll definitely. Yeah. If you live in that, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that county again because I
Lackawanna.
Lackawanna. Yeah. If you live in that county, definitely. See if we can help Bonnie out, get her some extra votes come election day next week. So we definitely want to have a good strong showing. You plan on so you're doing state rep. That's a special election, and are you running? Is it a Republican and a Democrat, or just a Republican running?
Yes. So
Okay.
there's both a Republican and a Democrat running. Dominic Minetti is the Republican. Tom Welby is the Democrat. Welby was it was Marty Flynn's seat. Welby was Marty Flynn's chief of staff. So he has experience in it, but he's also the Democrat. This seat has been Democrat controlled since its beginnings. It has never been anything but Democrat controlled. I don't actually. Did you ever look up the map for my district? It is incredibly gerrymandered. It is one of the most gerrymandered districts that I've seen, in any state. It's horrific. It's special. It looks like some kind of Tootsie Roll or something. But yeah, so this position, it is completely Democrat controlled from the very start. And I think that's one of the things that fired me up the most to run for this seat, was that there hasn't been any change. And I kind of just want to shake things up a little bit here and let everyone know that the status quo is no longer acceptable.
Very good. I like the sound of that.
Are you worried at all that if you lose and the Democrat wins again, that the Republicans will do their typical crying foul that you played spoiler or anything like that? Or
of course they will.
I always like to tell them.
For them.
Yeah, I always like to tell them when they do that. It's like, well, I mean, do better. Become more libertarian, and then maybe I won't feel like I need to run.
There you go.
I'll get my little tear tattoo right here, specifically for that candidate. That's fine. But I am uncontested for the auditor seat, and I'm very qualified for that one. I was appointed as a municipal treasurer, and I worked in a local borough here for 3 years doing that position. So I have some great experience in that area. So, even without the state rep seat, I'm going to be able to do some good things in the auditor position.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's a good, it's great that we're able to take these low, these lower positions and to kind of build that resume up a little bit, so that like next time when as we continue to run for, because I mean, now that I'm running for constable, and it's like kind of at first I was like, it's kind of a boring position. I really can't. I mean, there's some things you can do if you go and spend the money, get all the training and stuff. But you
can conceal carry and have your medical marijuana card.
Oh God. But
it's a loophole.
What I'm thinking about doing though is I haven't committed to it yet, but I've thought about maybe doing the constable thing a little bit, but then like maybe making a run at sheriff down the road, because I mean
name recognition. I was just gonna say that it's good. It's good. It's a name recognition. You're out in the community and they see your name continually pop up.
Yeah. So it's a good way to get our names out there more. So
and sheriff is a powerful seat.
Oh yeah.
There's some aspects of nullification that the sheriff can apply that are unbelievably strong that we maybe talk about it on another episode.
Ooh, that's intriguing. Yeah, I'll definitely have to. We'll definitely have to do something on that, because I'm thinking about it. I mean, it's one of the only positions in law enforcement that's elected, and I mean, as much as I some libertarians, and I've been this way in the past too, was just like oh, you can't do anything associated with the police because like they're the boogeyman. It's like, well, I get it, but like we also feel that way about politicians, but like we run for office, so I mean, it's like we gotta infiltrate, like Bonnie said, and like we have to be like a virus. We're libertarians are a pandemic that will bring down the state. So we have to view
Well,
ourselves.
and we can do it at the local level too. So that's something that you
Yeah.
can do at the local level to have a real impact.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, thanks, Bonnie, for coming on.
Thank you, Bonnie.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on here and sharing your thoughts. And if you're in her county, definitely go out on election day and support her. And thanks, Bonnie, also for all the work you do as secretary for the Pennsylvania party. I know those are like, I don't envy your position of having to keep notes for 4-hour board meetings once a month. That sounds like a very thankless job.
Like, I'm a nerdy person, but I didn't realize that the level of nerd that I would have to be for this. So, but no, I appreciate you guys having me on, and you're actually the very first podcast that I've ever done. So you have
Well, you did fantastic.
Well,
yeah, you did. You did a great job. So thanks again to you, Bonnie. Thanks for everybody for watching, and everyone enjoy the rest of your night.